the Security Council is called to order.
kulankani oo halkii ugu horeeyay golaha ammaanka ee Jumciyadda Quruumaha ka dhaxaysa ay yeeshaan sanadka cusub ee 2019 ayaa waxa lagaga hadlay xaaladda Soomaaliya. golaha ammaanka ee Jumciyadda Quruumaha ka dhaxaysa ayaa waxa warbixin ay ka dhageysteen wakiilka Midowga Afrika ee Soomaaliya Mr. Madiera Nicholas Haysom oo wakiilka xogayaha guud ee Qaramada Midoobay dalka Soomaaliya iyo danjiraha Soomaaliya u fadhiya Qaramada Midoobay Khudbaddii Usman.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Nicholas Haysom wakiilka xogayaha guud ee Qaramada Midoobay ayaa warbixinta uu ka jeediyay golaha ammaanka waxa uu kaga hadlay waxyaabaha Soomaaliya ka dhacay 4 bilood ee la soo dhaafay waxaana uu amaanay dawladda Soomaaliya oo uu sheegay inay wado dadaal ka dhana musuqmaasuqa isla markaasina ay ka go'an tahay dawladda inay dalka ku hogaamiso hadafyada qorshaysan.
Somalia has maintained a positive trajectory but continuing political turbulence.
Nicholas Haysom waxa sidoo kale uu sheegay Soomaaliya wuxuu caqabada inay ka wajahayso dhinaca doorashooyinka maamul goboleedyada waxaana uu tusaale u soo qaatay doorashadii ka dhacday dowlad goboleedka Koonfur Galbeed oo uu sheegay inay jireen eedeymo la xiriira faragelinta dowladda federaalka iyo rabshado goobtaasi ka dhacay kadib markii xabsiga loo taxaabay ku-xigeenkii hore ee Al-Shabaab Mukhtaar Roobo Abu Mansuur.
We witnessed this during the electoral process in Southwest State. Allegations of interference by the federal government and the violence which erupted following the arrest of one of the candidates, a former Al-Shabaab deputy leader.
taasoo ku tilmaamay tallaabo aan wanaag u horseedi doonin doorashooyinka kale ee mustaqbalka ka dhacaya gobolada kale ee dalka Soomaaliya uu ka kooban yahay iyo doorashooyinka guud ee dowladda federaalka ee Soomaaliya.
And does not bode well for the upcoming electoral processes in other regions or for the 2020 national elections.
waxaana uu ku sheegay mustaqbalka ay keeni karto in dad ay u goostaan dhinaca Al-Shabaab kuwaas oo ka faa'iideysanaya rabshadaha jira.
Violence for a political path. Regrettably, 15 people, including a regional assembly member, were killed during the violence.
waxa uu sheegay inuu ka xun yahay 15 qof oo ku dhintay rabshadihii ka dhacay magaalada Baydhabo oo mid ka mid ah xubin ka tirsan baarlamaanka Koonfur Galbeed Soomaaliya. Mr. Haysom waxa uu sidoo kale cambaareeyay weerarkii hoobiyaha ee lagu qaaday xarunta Qaramada Midoobay ee Soomaaliya gaar ahaan magaalada Muqdisho arintaas oo dhacday 2 maalmood ka hor.
I strongly condemn the mortar attack on our premises that took place 2 days ago and the casualties caused by such use of force.
isagoo intaasi ku daray inaan la aqbali karin weerar kasta oo loo geysto Qaramada Midoobay isagoo sheegay in xaalkoodu liito shaqaalihi halkaasi ku dhaawacmay. mas'uuliyadda weerarkan waxa sheegtay buu yiri Al-Shabaab ha yeeshee waxa uu soo dhaweeyay dowladda federaalka ee Soomaaliya in arintaasi ay cambaaraysay.
The federal government's condemnation of the attack.
Nicholas Haysom waxa uu sidoo kale golaha ammaanka u sheegay in xafiiska ansam ee Qaramada Midoobay ku leedahay Soomaaliya iyo urur goboleedka IGAD ay iska kaashadeen dhaqdhaqaaqyo dhanka diblomaasiyadda oo lagu xalinayo dagaalka tukarraq ku dhaxmaray ciidamada Somaliland iyo kuwa Puntland halkaas oo uu sheegay inay xal ka gaareen xabad joojin ilaa iyo hadda in lagu naaloodo.
IGAD and UNSOM engaged in shuttle diplomacy between Puntland and Somaliland to help them de-escalate the tension in Tukaraq and find a sustainable solution.
maruu ka hadlayay arrimaha bani'aadanimada ee Soomaaliya waxa uu sheegay inay jirto xaalad adag oo bani'aadanimo oo haysata 4.2 milyan oo qof oo 3 meelood oo laba ay caruur yihiin xaaladaas oo u baahan caalamku ay ka gurmadaan.
The needs remain high with 4.2 million people in need of assistance and protection.
wakiilka xogayaha guud Mr. Haysom waxa uu sheegay in fadqalalooyin iyo dhibaatooyinka ka dhacay Soomaaliya sanadkii 2018 ee dhamaaday ay ku waxyeeloobeen dad shacab oo gaaraya 1384 qof.
UNSOM has documented 1,384 civilian casualties in 2018.
khasaaraha dadkaasi soo gaarayna 60%. waxa uu sheegay Al-Shabaab inay sabab u ahaayeen
with Al-Shabaab accounting for 60% of these.
Mr. President.
sidoo kale waxa warbixin siiyay golaha ammaanka wakiilka Midowga Afrika Ambassador Madiera waxaana uu ka warramay isbedelada dhanka ammaanka hawlgallada AMISOM iyo horumarka laga sameeyay dhinaca ammaanka iyo dawladnimada Soomaaliya.
Unsustainably implemented.
danjiraha Soomaaliya ee Qaramada Midoobay Khudbaddii Usman ayaa ka warramay waxyaabaha dowladda federaalka ee Soomaaliya u qabsoomay waxaana uu sheegay in dowladda Soomaaliya ay qaaday tallaabooyin muhiim ah oo ku saabsan dhinaca dhaqaalaha la dagaalanka musuqmaasuqa sugidda ammaanka iyo horumarka dalka oo dawladdu ay abaabushay in dadweynuhu ay ka qayb qaataan mashruuca iskaa wax u qabsada ah ee lagu magacaabay isxilqaan. waxyaabaha kale uu sheegay waxaa ka mid ahaa in militariga Soomaaliya ay fuliyeen howlgalla ka madaxa bannaan AMISOM.
The Somali National Army has conducted independent operations in support of the transitional implementation in Lower Shabelle and Middle Shabelle.
Ambassador Abukar ayaa waxa uu dhaleeceeyay weerarka lagu qaaday xafiiska ANSAM ee Qaramada Midoobay ee ku yaala magaalada Muqdisho oo hoobiye lagu tuuray 2 maalmood ka hor.
Somalia's strong condemnation of the recent mortar attack.
waxaana uu sheegay in ciidanka dambi baarista dawladda Soomaaliya ay gacanta ku hayaan baaritaanka kiiskaasi.
That our law enforcement agencies promptly began investigation.
danjira Abukar Daahir Cusmaan waxa uu sidoo kale soo hadal qaaday arrintii la xiriirdhay ergeyga Qaramada Midoobay ee dawladda federaalka ee Soomaaliya ay sheegtay dalka inaanu ka sii shaqayn doonin. waxaana uu gabagabadii Ambassador Abukar u sheegay golaha ammaanka ee Qaramada Midoobay in wakiilada Qaramada Midoobay looga baahan yahay inay ku ekaadaan shaqooyinka iyo waajibaadka loo igmaday balse aanay faragelinin arrimaha gudaha ee dalka Soomaaliya.
To the Security Council that the UN and its representatives have duty, even obligation, to respect their mandate and do not interfere in our internal affairs and let the Somalis control their own destiny.
Thank you, Mr. President. I arrived in Somalia on the 3rd of October and had been well received by prominent officials of the federal government and of the regional states. I have been impressed with the federal government's far-reaching reform agenda and their commitment to practical implementation through roadmaps for delivery in each relevant sector. Somalia has maintained a positive trajectory, but continuing political turbulence could throw it off course. In December, the IMF completed its first review of the 3rd staff-monitored program, noting satisfactory performance by the federal government. In recognition of the country's significant progress, the World Bank's 2019-22 Country Partnership Framework unlocked International Development Association financing through pre-arrears clearance grants totaling 80 million to strengthen basic service delivery, improve financial management capabilities, and restore economic resilience. Improvements in public financial management and an expansion of the domestic revenue base with a recorded fiscal balance surplus of 8 million in September means that 56% of the federal government's 340 million budget for 2019 will be financed from domestic revenue, with the rest provided by donors. I want to commend the Office of the Prime Minister for leading government efforts to tackle corruption, including the announcement on the 9th of December of the federal government's intention to ratify the United Nations Convention Against Corruption. Turning to political progress, the roadmap on inclusive politics covers elections, the constitutional review, federalism and reconciliation. These are essential elements for Somalia's state-building project. The draft electoral law has been submitted to the Cabinet, and amendments from political parties, civil society, and the international community have been provided. The delay in submitting the draft electoral law to Parliament will see a key milestone missed, as per the government's commitment to have the electoral law adopted by December 2018. This will have a possible impact on the timelines for the electoral process. However, the National Independent Electoral Commission is still making headway with pre-voter registration preparations, including recruitment and training of new staff. The planning of the mapping of voter registration sites and the establishment and consolidation of its subnational structure. So far, 35 political parties have been registered. Technical cooperation has continued on the constitutional review process, laying the groundwork for real progress at the national level. The Federal National Technical Committee has been negotiating draft political agreements on justice, mineral resource sharing, allocation of powers and fiscal federalism. Women's meaningful participation in these decisions is essential. Members of the Women's Caucuses from both houses of Federal Parliament recently held a 2nd annual conference for women representatives of federal and state assemblies to consider the constitutional review process and preparations for the national elections. Mr. President, despite these positive developments, the stalemate between the federal government and the federal member states continues to impede concrete progress in defining the federal model, building institutions of state, and in the implementation of the national security architecture. The halt to cooperation between the MGS, between the federal government and the federal member states, was announced by the Council of Interstate Cooperation on the 8th of September. After visits to all the regions by Ambassador Madeira and myself, there have been encouraging Somali-led initiatives to restore relations. President Formaggio offered direct dialogue behind closed doors, and in October, Prime Minister Kaire established a 6-member ministerial committee to work with the upper house to end the stalemate. However, the landscape is complicated by electoral processes that are currently underway in several of the member states. Politics is complex in any nation, but in one that is still establishing its norms, institutional parameters, and still debating the responsibilities of its respective governance structures, there is a risk that complexity shifts to conflict. We witnessed this during the electoral process in Southwest State, allegations of interference by the federal government, and the violence which erupted following the arrest of one of the candidates, a former Al-Shabaab deputy leader, marred the process and does not bode well for the upcoming electoral processes in other regions or for the 2020 national elections. This may also have implications for the likelihood of future Al-Shabaab defectors who may be considering exchanging violence for a political path. Regrettably, 15 people, including a regional assembly member, were killed during the violence. Strains between the executive and the legislature also came to the surface on the 9th of December, when members of the House of the People submitted a motion for the impeachment of President Formaggio. Completing the demanding legislative agenda requires continued cooperation between the executive and legislature. Discord between the two can seriously hinder Somali's progress. I welcome the recent progress made, however, on the passage of the 2019 budget and the pension law before Parliament adjourned for recess. Mr. President, I strongly condemn the mortar attack on our premises that took place 2 days ago and the casualties caused by such use of force. In no country are attacks against the United Nations acceptable. As you are aware, 3 of our staff were injured, 1 seriously but not critically. You may also be aware that the responsibility for this attack was claimed by Al-Shabaab. I welcome the federal government's condemnation of the attack. Al-Shabaab remains the biggest source of insecurity in Somalia. Despite the ongoing operations to degrade the terrorist group, it still has the capacity to conduct indiscriminate attacks on Somali citizens and to target electoral delegates, the Somali security forces, and AMISOM. AMISOM and the Somali security force operations have succeeded in denying Al-Shabaab the possibility of launching conventional attacks. It now relies on improvised explosive devices and targeted assassinations. Of note, on 9th of November, Al-Shabaab claimed responsibility for a complex attack against the Sahafi Hotel in Mogadishu, initiated by 3 vehicle-borne IEDs. Over 50 people, including 7 Al-Shabaab militants, were killed in the attack. In Mogadishu and Puntland, pro-ISIS elements have targeted business owners using extortion to extract revenue and conducting assassinations. It appears that the cause of the conflict between the 2 extremist groups is now primarily driven by financial interests. Their focus is now on extortion of so-called taxes. In addition to military operations, it is therefore important to tackle this aspect as well as the infrastructure used by Al-Shabaab to assemble IEDs. There has been some progress in building the institutional capacity of the security sector to tackle these threats. Biometric registration programs for the Somali National Army and the Somali Police Force are forging ahead. An operational readiness assessment of the regional forces is underway, and these processes will hopefully assist the mapping of regional capabilities ahead of future integration of these forces into the national security architecture. Implementation of the transition plan made an encouraging start but has recently slackened. There will need to be a more comprehensive and better coordinated planning process to achieve the more ambitious transition locations in the timelines contained in the Somali transition plan. This must be guided by respect for human rights, appropriate measures towards stabilization, all as agreed in the transition plan. Overall, the approach to transition should be conditions-based, with progress in building effective Somali security institutions as the main factor setting the pace. We have continued to support conflict resolution and conflict prevention efforts in several parts of the country, in collaboration with other partners. IGAD and UNSOM engaged in shuttle diplomacy between Puntland and Somaliland to help them de-escalate the tension in Tukarek and find a sustainable solution. As a result of the joint mediation effort, de facto ceasefire is holding. On the regional level, the tripartite agreement signed between the leaders of Somalia, Ethiopia and Eritrea on the 6th of September is an opportunity for Somalia to strengthen its regional ties and provide further support to Somalia's economic, political and security progress. Mr. President, the humanitarian crisis in Somalia remains amongst the most complex and long-standing in the world. Armed conflict and widespread violence, as well as recurrent climatic shocks, perpetuate high levels of humanitarian need and protection concerns. While the humanitarian situation has improved compared to last year, due to the above-average GU rains, the needs remain high, with 4.2 million people in need of assistance and protection. Of those who need assistance and protection services, almost 2/3 are children. Around 1.5 million are severely food insecure at crisis or emergency levels. Around 2.6 million people are internally displaced. The 2019 Humanitarian Response Plan, to be announced this month, targets 3.4 million people, or 81% of the 4.2 million people in need of assistance, requiring $1.1 billion for its implementation. Mr. President, respect for human rights and international humanitarian law and the protection of civilians in the context of the conflict, remains key for Somalia's transition and sustainable peace. UNSOM has documented 1,384 civilian casualties in 2018, with Al-Shabaab accounting for 60% of these. Progress has been made, including taking steps to establish institutions that protect human rights, such as the Federal Independent National Human Rights Commission. I encourage the federal government to finalize the Commission's foundation. Mr. President, Somalia has laid the foundations to make significant progress in 2019. The plans are in place and the milestones are clear. The management of the upcoming regional elections in 2019 and the remaining political processes, particularly the review of the Constitution, will determine whether Somalia makes further progress or not. Achieving this will require all role players to pull in the same direction. Somalia has set that direction, and I hope that you will be updated on the progress in the year to come. Thank you.